Hello, everyone from Chelsea Fan TV. Welcome back to episode number 2 of 3 Points Perspective, the brand new show that we brought onto the channel with myself, Charlie, and Nina. Seems like the last episode actually did quite well. So we're going to keep doing this show, and as long as you guys enjoy it and you want us to keep doing it, we'll try our best to continue as best as we can. It is a Monday morning, and I was just speaking with Charlie and Nina before. I don't remember the last time we recorded on a Monday morning. I mean, guys, have you ever recorded at this time for like any YouTube video ever? I generally don't think I've ever recorded this early. Like any time before sort of 2 p.m. is too early.
Illegal.
So, I mean, we've pulled out the stops tonight, guys. That's why we might look a little bit tired, because some of us have just woken up. I don't know about Charlie and Nina, but I mean, I'm still waking up. But I'm ready. I'm ready for the game tomorrow against Newcastle, and there's plenty to talk about from Sheffield. You know, we've got a number of topics to cover, 3 as per, and we'll just get straight into it. I mean, Nina, you wanted to talk about Caicedo. And if he is good enough for Chelsea. I know there's been mixed feelings about him because some performances have been pretty good, some not so much. But against Sheffield, he was fantastic.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Yeah, look, I thought because he was such a standout player against Sheffield, and I thought to myself, he's had games where you could say, like, argue he's one of the worst players in the pitch, and he's had games where you could say he's been the best on the pitch. And I think that comes with being 22, being inexperienced, because I think the biggest thing with Caicedo is the price tag that fools people or perhaps makes them overly critical. I think if he didn't cost that much, he definitely wouldn't be under the scrutiny that he is. But, you know, when you cost that much, it's just inevitable, really, isn't it? But that's not his fault, is it? It's not his fault that he was priced at that. He had one really good season at Brighton, and as far as I know, he didn't even play that many games. But, you know, obviously they saw something really worthwhile, something really sort of promising in him to go into the race. And it wasn't just Chelsea. You know, you saw Liverpool. I mean, when have Liverpool ever bid 111 million for a midfielder? You know, if he's not going to come good, then what do people see in him? What do recruiters see in him? Which is why I think we should be more patient with him. I think, you know, he's already becoming so much better. Even against Brighton, you know, you saw that sort of aggression there. And I think it obviously made it sort of even more kind of, you know, it meant more to him because he was up against his former club too. But, you know, there are really positive signs. And for me, it's so important that he wants to be at Chelsea as well. I love the fact that he came out and said, you know, I want Chelsea over Liverpool. That's always something nice to hear when you're getting a young player like that. And I just think there's so much more we can see from him. But I think he's improving as well, which is a big green flag. I mean, if we want to like flash back to his debut against West Ham, you know, that was, we can all agree, really poor. But it's only kind of gone up. And yeah, there has been downs as well, but it seems that there's more improvement. I don't know if you guys would agree.
No, it was interesting on Saturday that obviously played a single pivot alongside Gallagher. I think it's probably the first time he's not played with Enzo Fernandez in there. I could be wrong, but I think it's definitely it could be the first time or one of very few times. He actually probably had his best game in a Chelsea shirt. And I'm not saying that's because Enzo wasn't playing, but it was interesting to see that, you know, because Gallagher's not someone you really associate as a pivot player. I don't like seeing him in there, but I suppose against Sheffield United at home, you could probably get away with it. It allowed, you know, Caicedo sat there as the kind of the single 6 and the pivot, and then Gallagher obviously got forward a lot more. Gallagher was more involved in the sort of the final third play than I thought he has been in the last few matches. I'm not saying it's something we're going to see more of in the future, but like, a lot of people were saying that Enzo was rested. He wasn't. He just wasn't picked for this game. I think that's fair to say that, you know, his performances, despite how good he is, huge fan of him. You know, he's a top player, but we're being honest, you expect more. And it's not quite happened for Enzo this season. Caicedo, a bit of a slow burner, but he seems to be coming into some form now. I wonder if Poch has seen that, and then maybe he might think, do you know what, in certain games, I don't have to play Enzo and Caicedo together. You know, maybe it can work with Gallagher in there. Or do you know what's going to be more interesting is what happens when Lavia's fit again? Because I think Lavia's a phenomenal player. And he would suit in a pivot. I mean, admittedly, if you went Enzo and if you went Caicedo and Lavia as a two, there's not. I mean, Caicedo can get forward, but there's perhaps not really an obvious forward thinking player in that too. But it does give you options, and I'm not saying that Enzo doesn't deserve to be in the team, but it goes to show that we can play without him. I'm not saying that just because we beat Sheffield United means that Enzo is not important to the team. I'm absolutely not saying that, because he will be. I'm just not sure if Poch is getting the best out of him. And it was just interesting to see that Caicedo had his best game when Enzo wasn't playing next to him. I mean, it could just be because it was Sheffield United or whatever, but I don't know if that's something we could maybe potentially see a bit more of going forward.
100%, man, 100%. And this is really interesting. We speak about this when I spoke to. Well, we did the fan cams. Jason Cundy was just hanging about. I don't know who was with, family or a friend or something. And I said, Jason, come on, man, let me ask you a question. And he went, who are you? And I went, Chelsea Fan TV. He went, Jesus Christ. That's literally what he said. He went, Jesus Christ. And then he walked over and said, all right, go on then. I was like, all right. I asked him about Caicedo, and I said, it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Because we've played Gallagher, Enzo, and Caicedo together so many times, but it hasn't really molded as well. I mean, we've had a good midfield in some of the bigger games, but generally speaking, we haven't had like a great chemistry. And he said, yeah, it is really interesting, because I think Caicedo had his best ever game in a Chelsea shirt against Sheffield. But he also said that it's a good problem to have with Enzo, because he needs to fit Enzo into that team. He said that this is not really something that Pochettino can afford to do regularly. He needs to try and fit Enzo in, week out. So it's a case of who do you drop. But then you go back to the other players up top, and I think they benefit as well from potentially not having that midfield three that we're so used to, because I want to see Mudryk playing. I like Sterling on the right side. I like Palmer as a 10. I like the fact that they can interchange. And then Jackson as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, he hasn't been at his best, but he's still been scoring some goals. It's not been a complete lack of output. But no, I completely agree with you in that sense.
I definitely think, just on that, like certainly in home games, particularly against lower level opposition. I know we're not exactly near the top end of the table, but teams down the bottom at home, you really, particularly given our home record, particularly given how we struggle to break down teams that sit deep, you don't need to be starting those sort of home games with Gallagher, Enzo, and Caicedo all playing. If you can get an extra attacking player on the pitch, it will make a massive difference. And having, Mudryk, Sterling, Palmer behind Jackson or Breyer, whoever it might be, that does make a big difference. And hopefully it's something we might see a bit more of, because you don't need them, all those midfield players in those sort of games at home against lesser opposition. I can fully understand, games away from home, you might want a bit more solidity in there. You maybe sacrifice a slightly more attack-minded player. You go over 3 in midfield. But I think it's definitely something we should look at seeing more of, particularly in games at home against lesser opposition. Like, even if you start like that and then you get a lead and then you switch it up and you switch to that 3 to try and see the game out, fine. But I think, it's definitely something we should look at more of, is just having a 2 in midfield for games against lesser opposition.
Yeah, I agree. I tweeted that as well. That was the first thing when I noticed that Enzo had been not rested but benched, is that, like you said, it provides more attacking threat, which is what you want to see. You want to see that you're trying to go full attack, and I said that that's the only way that both Sterling and Mudryk can play, because they can never be on the pitch at the same time with Palmer and a striker, whether it be Jackson or Breuer. And I think that really does balance out the pace on both flanks, because I think Sterling and Mudryk are our quickest players, you guys would agree, right? So having that balance, and then Palmer creating in the 10, I think offers much more moving forward. And then if the striker can do their job, finish those chances created, then we look a lot more threatening up front. So I actually think that was a really good call from Pochettino.
Just one thing on Poch very quickly. Like, I don't know how many people, I'm sure like people wrote about it afterwards, but I forgot to mention it. Like, we were calling for subs at half time, but one thing that he did do at half, I don't know if either of you noticed it. One thing he did do is he switched Palmer from the 10 out to the right hand side at half time, and then he put Sterling central and it made a massive difference because Palmer got on the ball so much more in that right-hand side. And that little subtle tactical switch that I don't know how many people noticed it. It made a big difference in the game. And I don't want to say it won us the game, but it certainly helped and probably ultimately did make us win. So just a little subtle thing like that. And we talk about in-game management, tactical things from Poch has not been that great this season. And rightfully criticised for sure. But when it's been good, like on Saturday, it needs to be praised because that was a little switch that he made and it made a massive difference.
Yeah, 100%. Nobody talks about the good stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still Sheffield.
People aren't interested in that, are they?
It's 3 points, mate. It's 3 points. I'll take 3 points. But again, you do actually want to expect that from your manager, especially if he's considered to be elite. But I mean, listen, time will tell. And I think especially if we do end up getting players in January and stuff like that, it will allow Pochettino to potentially be a little bit more flexible with what he's able to do and not quite as rigid. Don't get me wrong, I think that it's nice to give players a run out, but it's nice to have players that you can rely on as well. And I don't think Pochettino necessarily has that throughout the whole squad. Just my last question for you guys on Caicedo before we move on. I think another reason that people are expecting so much from him is because of how well Declan Rice is doing at Arsenal, and obviously we were linked with Declan Rice. I have a mate who lives in London. He was in a cafe at one point, and one of our agents was one of his agents. Sorry, was talking with a guy from Chelsea that he knew, and I remember him texting me in the group chat. I think I reposted it on Chelsea Fan TV's group chat. So there was a talk, or it looked like there was a talk at some point, but it just never came to fruition. We got Caicedo. We were very happy with it. But I mean, how can we compare Caicedo to Rice without getting carried away? Because we know Rice is obviously a more experienced player, and he's playing a more experienced side as well.
Yeah, you can't really compare the two. Obviously, there's going to be comparisons because they're both big money signings. But the thing we've got to realise is Rice, 24 years of age now, he's an established England international. He's been in the Premier League for a number of years. He's a lot more experienced. And right now, he is a better player.
He's won in Europe too.
Yeah, he's a better player. There's no denying that. But I think with Caicedo, obviously you're paying for not just what he is now, but the potential. Of course, you've got to realise that potential, etc. But he's like a different player. And again, this is a guy that's coming into Chelsea. He's not played very much senior level football. I don't think he even plays. He did one season at Brighton, pretty much. I think he played 50 games for him, maybe a few more. Not many games, and you get over £100 million move to Chelsea, who are struggling. You go into a difficult environment there. The team's not clicking. It's full of new players, and you're expected to perform straight away. We had no pre-season because the transfer saga was going on. Difficult debut at West Ham, but look, he's improving for sure, and he will get better. I haven't got any concerns about him, but yeah, look, the comparisons to Rice are going to be obvious, aren't they? But I think it's a little bit unfair because they're not really it's not really a level playing field right now for the both of them, considering sort of how much more experienced Rice is going into a lot more settled team, a lot more experienced team, and a much better team right now. It's so much easier going into a better team because when the team's winning and doing well, no one really cares if a certain player's not really doing that well. But when you go into a team that's struggling and is crap like we are right now, it gets highlighted a lot more, and it's a lot more difficult to sort of put your footprint on things.
I agree. And you also have to consider the players around Rice as well. They've been playing with each other now for a few seasons, and it's not the same at Chelsea. So not only are you coming into a new midfield, it's literally new midfield. You're playing alongside Enzo, who's been here for less than a year. So as much as people want to say, Declan Rice is thriving, that was only just sort of one addition made into there, and he slotted right into perfectly established relationships. So come on, how much harder can it be? It's a lot easier. So I think there's more to consider here than just compare the two.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, I think people have got to just sort of wake up and don't get me wrong, it's a numbers game in football. It's turning into that. We all look at stats and we look at goal contributions within a certain amount of games and pass completion and forward passes. Like all of this stuff comes into it, but these guys are young men at the end of the day, and it's not easy walking into the limelight. So I do agree with the fact that we need to be a little bit patient, but also, you know, there is a standard that needs to be set. We've got to find that balance. One person who knows very well what it's like to play for Chelsea, but still divides opinion, is Conor Gallagher. Apparently, the owners are still very not keen to sell, but very open to sell, which is surprising to me because, if I'm being honest with you, Pochettino loves him. He looks like he's Pochettino's favourite player, and just to hear that is quite unsettling, considering when Pochettino came in, we thought he was going to get given power in the transfer market and enough power to build his own Chelsea team, because at the end of the day, we signed so many players under Tuchel. We then brought Potter in, then we had Lampard. You know, it's very difficult for a manager to build a squad without any control, and we know Pochettino's going to have to say. But for me, if Pochettino is open to this sale, then it's fine. But I can't see that being the case, considering how much he gets played by Pochettino. So, I mean, where do you guys stand on Gallagher? And also, what is the price that you would accept?
Mate, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because I never thought I'd be in a position defending Conor Gallagher and saying that we shouldn't be selling him, because I was one of them in the summer that was like, you know what? Could be a useful squad player. I'm not asked if he goes. If he goes, fine. No problem. If he stays, you know, we can use him in certain games or whatever. But like, he's probably the one player you could say under Poch that has massively, massively improved compared to what you saw last season. He's the sort of player that Poch clearly likes. You know, he started every game in pre-season. He started every game this season, obviously, bar the United one that he was suspended for. And look, he's been one of our best players. There's no denying it. Whether you like him or not, he has been one of our best players. He's been important. He's captained the sides at times. The manager loves him. The only reason we're talking about, well, the only reason why there's sort of talks about him being sold is purely because he's an academy player, because he represents pure profit on the books, and we are sailing a little bit close to the wind in terms of profit and sustainability rules within the Premier League. And, you know, if you're selling the academy players, you get, obviously, you know, all that money goes as profit, which is a good thing for the book. So that's probably why it's being entertained. You know, you don't have, you know full well that Poch is not on board with a sale. You know, you only have to look at his comments after the game on the weekend, you know, saying that, you know, as far as he's aware, you know, he wants Gallagher to stay. Gallagher and the club both want to continue. But, you know, you're always going to get that. And the problem is, like, if Chelsea are going to sell him, like, you're not going to get maximum money. He's got 18 months left on his contract, expires at the end of next season. Even if you do want to sell him eventually, you still offer him a new deal to protect his value anyway. So, like, it doesn't really make any sense. And the only reason for me why it's being even thought about is because of the money we've spent, perhaps reckless spending in certain aspects, and it's a way of, you know, making sure that we don't break the profit and sustainability rules because he's an academy player. Look, do I think he's an unbelievable player? No, I don't. Do I think he's a long-term future at Chelsea? Possibly not. But even if we're going to get rid of him, as I said, it doesn't make any sense not to offer this guy a new contract. You know, he's earned it on his performances. And even if you're unsure, you do it to protect his value anyway, because the longer his contract runs down for, the less money you're going to get for him anyway. And he probably is a 50 or 60 million pound midfielder.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same. If you'd asked me in summer, I probably wouldn't have minded if we'd sold him. But it's a very different story now. And you know how people used to say Mason Mount was every manager's star boy and he'd just play him at any cost? I feel like that's Conor Gallagher is Pochettino's star boy. You know, the only game he rested him for was Brighton in the Cup, and then he didn't play the game he was suspended. Every other game he started. And he used to be a squad player that people would moan about if they saw him on the team sheet. And now it's the opposite. Now it's like, how dare you even consider selling Conor Gallagher? So it's crazy how far he's come, and I like to think Pochettino's, you know, got credit for that, because he has developed under him massively, really worked out where he's played. He's even sort of rewarded him with the captain armband as well, so that's obviously a big deal as well. But I think what we'll see is, I get the whole sort of making a profit side of it, but I think we'll really understand how much say Pochettino has and how much agency he has with the players that he decides to keep and sell. I think that would be a really big thing to see, because right now we know that he would never even, you know, he wouldn't consider it. He wouldn't sell Gallagher. And if we did, then I'd know that it's purely looking at profit. It's purely just sort of dictated merely just upon that. And, you know, we're already selling Trevor Chalobah, if that's still happening. So we're already going to sell sort of youth. And I don't think Conor Gallagher, like selling him would be beneficial in terms of what we're doing on the pitch right now. So I think that really does put things into perspective, like who really is running and making the calls here, because like we said, we know that Poch wouldn't let Gallagher go. So if we do, then obviously he doesn't have as much agency as we think he does.
Well, it's clear that, you know, the manager hasn't got that much say. He has input in it, but ultimately it's the directors that assign the players. And I think you can tell by the fact after Everton game, he's saying he come out not happy with the score. We need more players. He didn't have a lot of say on the players that come in the summer. And I think it's clear that he thinks a lot of these guys that have come in aren't good enough right now, which is why he's calling for more players. We know we need a centre forward, but, you know, reports saying he wants a midfield player, maybe a centre back. We could even look at a left back now. Cucurella's out till February, had his surgery the other day. You know, we need more players. It's clear that, you know, he hasn't got as big a say as perhaps a lot of people thought. He has input, but, you know, he's not exactly recommending players. And, you know, a manager should just be managing the team. You don't want to be thinking about transfers and all that shit. Have your input and stuff. But for me, it would be absolutely clear that if Gallagher was sold, A, it's purely financial, and B, it's a pure ownership decision. It's not, Gallagher doesn't want to leave the club, and Poch definitely don't want to get rid of him. So, you know, if he did end up going in January, I think that it could maybe be a bit of a strain on the relationship between the ownership and a manager potentially.
To be honest with you, I just don't see it in January. I don't see it because it's like the Maatsen situation. As a player, in fact, it's actually better for Gallagher than it was with Maatsen, because Maatsen didn't even get minutes. Gallagher's got consistent minutes. He has no reason to leave. Like, if I was Gallagher and I wasn't being offered a new deal and I was still being played at Chelsea, I would just stay at Chelsea until my contract runs out, providing I'm still getting the game time. Now, God forbid Pochettino got sacked, I've got a different manager comes in, game time changes, we're having a different conversation. But ultimately, with a lot of these youth players like Chalobah, obviously Maatsen as well, you know, it is just a question of game time. And if they had game time, we wouldn't be having these conversations about getting rid of these players.
I think
so. We could easily get rid of those guys. I mean, that's pure profit on the books as well, you know. So everyone's so fixated on Gallagher. I know you probably get a bigger offer for him than anyone else, just because, you know, he's probably one of our most informed players. But I mean, that doesn't say an awful lot about Chelsea at the moment.
But I think it's interesting as well. Like, obviously, we need to raise money to spend in January. Like, we're looking at players like Ivan Toney, looking at players like Victor Osimhen potentially. We need to raise money, and our most valuable assets are those academy guys, whether people like it or not. So, from Chalobah's done, we know he's done. Maatsen probably will go in January. The only thought that maybe he might not go in January is because Chilwell still isn't fit and Cucurella is out till at least February, which leaves us with only Levi Colwill as a left back. Maatsen can play left back, so I wonder if they might be tempted to keep him just to the end of the season, unless we go in for a left back again in January, maybe someone on loan. I don't really know. But yeah, we need to raise money. And the quickest way of doing that is academy players. But I think there is something to say about having some academy players, obviously if they're good enough, in the squad, because it's important to have guys that understand what it means to play for the club, understands the DNA of the club. Because right now we've got so many guys that don't really have any idea what it means to play for Chelsea. And if you take away, you know, those players that live and breathe the club, it's hard to maintain that culture.
100%. And also from an ownership point of view, I mean, we're talking about FFP and profitability. They'll be desperate for new players to come through the academy. That's free money. That's free money right there. Whether it's shirt sales or, you know, player sales or whatever it is. You know, these guys are looking at the numbers and they're saying, you know, if we can get players out of this academy, then, you know, that saves us spending 50 million and risking losing that money. But also, when we look at players we could be signing in January, I am a little bit worried as well, because I did a little bit of research last night on the Dodgers, and the Dodgers just recently signed
some Japanese geezer.
Sorry?
Some Japanese geezer, didn't they?
Yeah, they just signed this Japanese guy on I think it was a $700 million contract or 650 million. And the more you look into it, the more you realize it's not actually a bad deal for the Dodgers. And that's crazy, because the money that these guys can generate is actually equivalent, if not more, to what they're spending on him. Obviously, he's a free agent, so they don't have to pay a fee, but the contract itself is ridiculous. It's the biggest contract in sports history, as far as I'm aware. So that kind of, it gets dressed up as though they're signing the Mbappe or the Messi or the Ronaldo of baseball, and they're chasing this winning project. But in baseball, if you win, you make more money. In football, you can't guarantee that you're going to win with the best players. And we've seen that with PSG. We've seen that with ourselves. So, again, it makes me question where we're going in terms of signing new players and the direction we're going to move in January. I mean, it's a 4-window process, or so I've read.
Yeah, Ornstein was saying that on NBC, with 2 windows into a 4-window plan. Well, I wonder what the plan is for these next 2 windows. If it's not to add experience, then we're fucked, basically.
Yeah, whatever that means. But, listen, I was willing to give time, and, if people have already run out of time and patience, then I think, why did you say trust the process in the first place?
Like, they're stuck back in 2003
still. To go up and down. So, that's something that can be debated. But listen, guys, I mean, we haven't got too much longer left, so let's just move on to Newcastle. How are we feeling for this game? It's Carabao Cup semis.
Quarters.
And Eddie Howe is, sorry, mate?
Quarterfinals, but we haven't quite got semis. Yeah.
and it's against Eddie Howe's Newcastle, who have had a little bit of a difficult time in December. I thought it would actually be worse than it has been. But, it doesn't seem to be getting any easier for them with the injuries. So can we take anything from that game?
Oh, I don't look at it and think it's an easier game. I think, if anything, Newcastle are going to be more hungry and more up for it, because, they're out of the Champions League now. They lost out, just lost out in the Cup last year. And, they're going to want it. They're going to want it. And they have the quality this time round to go up until the end to win themselves a domestic cup if they wanted to. So it doesn't make me feel any more sort of comfortable. It doesn't make me feel any more relaxed about it. We saw that they beat us, even with their B team, if you like. And I know it's very different Premier League from playing a domestic cup game, but even still, I think if you look at it purely mentality wise, if we don't turn up mentally, they will, and it's a lost game. That's how I see it.
I think for me, I feel more confident because we've won a game, but also, if you look at Newcastle, like if this was away from home, I'd give us almost no chance. But because this is at Stamford Bridge, because Newcastle's away form is poor, there's no denying that. Eddie Howe will make as many changes as possible. I mean, they're a bit of a, they've got a lot of injuries. I think Joe Linton and Fabian Schär went off at the weekend, as well as another 2 first-team players potentially down. They've got a lot of injuries. Doesn't mean they can't still field a competitive side. Lewis Miley, the 17-year-old, is a top prospect. They've got players like Gordon, etc. They've got guys that can cause problems. I just feel that at home, given the amount of games Newcastle have played recently, very little rotation. I think I think for me personally, we can say we've got more than a decent chance. I just don't want to sit for a penalty shootout, because again, that could be a possibility. No extra time either. 90 minutes of it's a draw straight to the pen. So that's something we need to be prepared for as well. I don't know what the mentality of these players is like in terms of stepping up to the spot, but yeah, I think we can be confident, but I also feel, it is going to be fine margins in this game again, but we really need to win this Carabao Cup. Qualifying for Europe for the league is going to be tough. Winning either of the domestic cups gives you a pathway into Europe, and, we need a trophy. We haven't won a domestic cup for a while. Pochettino's not won a trophy in England. Like, this trophy is important in terms of Poch could be a first trophy in England, first, trophy for this group of players, breeds that winning mentality, gives you a lot of confidence. So, mate, I know people laugh at the Carabao Cup, but mate, this is massively important for us.
It's a much more serious competition than people give it credit for. But at the end of the day, most people don't have the chance to win it. So that's probably why they don't respect it as well. I think when you do end up getting to semis and the final, and obviously coming to Wembley, nobody's going to turn down that opportunity. But you know, we've had some great days in the Carabao Cup. I remember obviously Liverpool lost, you know, last time out against Tuchel with Tuchel and
that wasn't
Klopp.
a great day.
I mean, no, but in terms of the fact, I'll tell you why it was great, Charlie. And it's same with Man City when we had Sarri. We lost those matches, but we had a proper competitive spirit, and you know that was the Chelsea that I know. If we were going to lose the final, which wasn't very often, you know, we would go out and it would be an absolute slog. I've never seen a team like us, like what we were in finals, never really be able to penetrate, but just never allowing the other team to do anything either. So it was just this constant tactical battle, and always ends up going to penalties. And we had a few tough days, but you know, I don't think we'll have that with this team now. I mean, if we do end up conceding in these games, then obviously we are making life a lot harder for ourselves. But again, it's a weird one, because you know how we talk about the fact that we need a trophy. Newcastle need a trophy, man.
Yeah.
Newcastle need a trophy. And it's crazy to think, but the expectation is now higher for them than it is for us. And we talk about the fact that we want a trophy. But if we're going to talk about the fact whether it's realistic for us to actually go and win these big games and score these big goals and still maintain the composure to have a clean sheet or potentially win a penalty shootout, I mean, you're saying to yourself, hang on a second, mate. You just scraped to win against Sheffield. You can't beat any of the other top teams. I mean, a 4-4 against Man City was a win for us. You know, the mentality's in the mud. So how are you going to go out and compete for FA Cups, Premier Leagues, get Champions League football? I mean, Carabao Cup, it's still a trophy, but how are you going to beat other teams in terms of that competition? Because they're taking it just as seriously as we are.
I mean, mate, this I know obviously we've got to get through tomorrow, but the cup is like it's really opening up, because let's just say we do get through tomorrow. You've got what, Liverpool, West Ham as another quarter final. You've got Middlesbrough against Port Vale, and you've got Everton versus Fulham. You know, you get through this. I mean, if West Ham can do a favour and knock Liverpool out, I mean that's going to be very difficult. But let's say they did. You know, you're looking at what, Chelsea, West Ham, probably Middlesbrough, and probably Everton as the last four, and then you have to kind of fancy your chances. Then, I mean, I presume Liverpool probably win, and like, you know, you're looking at Liverpool as probably the only obstacle left in the competition. Like, it's not beyond doubt that, you know, that we can win this competition. You know, obviously it's ifs and buts with a draw and whatnot, and us doing our job, but you know, it's not like you've got, you know, City, Arsenal, Liverpool that could all be in the last four. Like, there's like probably one big team left in the competition. So this can really open up for us if we do our job tomorrow. There should be no problems with motivation or anything like that. We should be bang up for this. You know, we haven't won a domestic cup since what, FA Cup under Conte, when Hazard scored the penalty against United. Like, mate, we've lost so many finals, 3 FA Cup finals in a row, Carabao Cup finals we've lost. Yeah, mate, it's not good enough. So we need to, you know, get the job done tomorrow. And, you know, winning a trophy, particularly what, end of February, first weekend in March, whenever it is, that can really see us through for the second half of the season and push us hard up the table as we possibly can.
100%, and it would be the first trophy under the Bowley regime as well. I mean, I remember when he came in and we lost to Liverpool. I think that would have been the FA Cup. You know, and Bowley had his Chelsea badge on, and you're thinking, okay, Bowley's Blues, we're here. But it was just being carried from the previous regime. So at least we could say this is the first trophy under the current regime. And then you can back a winning process as well, because so many people don't believe that the ownership want to win. I say to that, that's a bit of a strange philosophy, because if you don't want to win, then you're not going to make money. And then what was the point of buying Chelsea? But I can understand where people are coming from in terms of, you know, just wanting to buy young players, build them up and sell them. I think there's more to it than that, which is why it's a 4-window plan, not a 2-window plan. Because if it was all over now, you'd say it's an absolute disaster what we finish with. But in 2 seasons or in a year and a half or whatever it is, we could look at this and say, you know, we feel stupid because all along it ended up working out because we gave Pochettino time. Mudryk clicked, Caicedo clicked, Enzo clicked, all of these players. And, you know, then we can actually get something from it. But also, when you look at the final as well, it's just good to get into the habit of progressing through these competitions. Like, remember when Klopp first came to Liverpool? Never ever progressed in any of the domestic cup competitions, and it's really only been in the past couple of years that they've been able to do that. So for us to start off early and get Pochettino in there straight away competing, you know, that shows that there is still some mentality there, because you know, I don't remember a Chelsea that never got through these stages. You went to a Carabao Cup quarterfinal or an FA Cup quarterfinal or a Champions League quarterfinal,
Knew you were winning,
expecting to win. You know, that is the norm. That's the normality. So although our league form has slipped, even under Roman it was slipping, we've always tend to, you know, we've always been competing in those cup competitions. So why should that change? I mean, you know, that's just about moments and knowing who you're playing for. And if you're a big game team and if you're a big game player, then you can produce in these moments. But listen, guys, just before we round out, let's have your score predictions, and then we'll leave it there.
Margot, so I think we'll win 2-1.
You think 2-1?
Yeah.
I want to back that, but I'm not as confident as you. You know, so I'm stuck between being realistic and being optimistic to at least manifest it. What's the point in going into this game thinking it's a lost game? Okay, I'm nervous, but I'll predict us to win.
Penalties win?
Oh gosh, I don't want to take penalties. My heart can't take that. Also, which penalty takers? Like who's taking penalties?
Palmer takes all 5 of them.
Palmer takes all 5 of them. Yeah. Palmer, Enzo. Who else are you giving a pen to? Sterling.
Gallagher.
Yeah, Sterling. Gallagher can take a pen, I reckon.
Gallagher can take a pen. Has he ever taken a penalty for Chelsea?
No, probably not.
Oh, brilliant.
He hasn't. Woohoo.
Jackson
probably take one if he has to.
Oh God, and skies it high above the bar. Okay, do you know what? I'm going to say 1-0 Chelsea.
1-0 Chelsea. I can back that as well. I'd say 1-0. I think if we are going to win, it's not going to be a high scoring game.
No, narrow scoreline.
I don't see us scoring a lot of goals. And also, you know, if we keep playing Badiashile as well, you know, we've got a real solid, you know, back line as well, because but people are always talking about Silva. We need to play Silva. I don't think it's a bad thing to drop Silva necessarily for this game and play Badiashile and Disasi. But again, it's about depth, isn't it? If we've got players to cover on the right and the left side as well. So Pochettino might end up playing 4 centre backs, which will be fun. But yeah, I'll back a 1-0 win as well. But listen, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have been watching for the full episode, 38 minutes. That's very respectable. And we woke up. Well, I woke up about 7:30 to do this. You guys probably woke up and yeah, you've been awake for a while. First morning podcast on this channel, people. If you don't respect it, smash the like button. If you agree or disagree with anything myself, Charlie, or Nina have said, let us know in the comments, and we will leave their channels in the description as well. All the best, guys. Up the Chelsea, and we will speak very soon.